Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to talk about three very important topics. We're going to cover the structure of the self because that is an extremely important topic. Also, we're going to cover different types of therapies, their initials, and what do these initials mean, because there's many different types of therapies and just about over 320 types of psychotherapy modalities available. So that is a lot. So we are going to educate you just a little bit today so you can be informed. So what is the self? The self is a complicated enough structure, but I'm going to keep it very simple today, and I'm going to cover it rather quickly because we can always come back to this in a more detailed fashion later on. So the self is a dynamic construct that changes over time. And the self is perceived as a mental or cognitive construct, is also physical experiences and actions and changes in different situations. All right? While your physical experiences and action shape the sense of the self, and influence your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So that's quite a handful of information. And then you might ask yourself, and all of us, I've asked myself many, many times, who am I? Am I my thoughts? Am I my body? Am I my title? Am I my role? Who am I? And even though the self is often thought of as a single and unified entity, according to William James, and William James is the father of functional psychology, functional, how things function. According to William James, the self is actually composed of different aspects or dimensions, and he distinguished multiple dimensions of the self in the context of consciousness within two levels of hierarchy. The I self, which is subjective, and the me self, which is objective. The I self refers to the existence and to the process of knowing, and the me self refers to the object and represents the subjective phenomenology at a higher level, and then the objective phenomenology at a lower level. Now, most of us are more familiar with the me self. The I self, which is subjective observation and accumulation of information, creates three types of knowledge of the me self. So the me self does not exist without the I self, right? So the three types of knowledge, not necessarily hierarchy, but knowledge as the me self, which are created through observation and accumulation of information by the I self, are material self, social self, and spiritual self. The material self includes the body and the possession. The social self includes your social self, which is the closest to your self-esteem, including all the characteristics recognized by others. And this is what a lot of people have difficulties with the self. It is the social self, because others don't recognize certain characteristics that you might possess, or they don't understand you. Or you focus too much on the material self and don't allocate as much attention to the spiritual self. And the spiritual self is made of evaluation regarding the self. And these are perceived abilities, attitude, interest, values, beliefs, opinion, motivation, traits, etc. A lot of people refer to the spiritual self as the personality. But that's not entirely correct. So within the me self, we have material self, your physical body, your belongings, the social self, you interacting with others, and then your spiritual self, that which your personality, your abilities. So when it comes down to the evaluation comes down to 3 areas as well. The real self, ideal self, and dreaded self. And it's are all part of myself, to the me self, and then to the self-evaluation. The real self is your I self and all of the me self. The way you evaluate yourself as the real self. The ideal self is who you ideally would like to be. And the dreaded self, it's often perceived as being unsuccessful or as having bad habits, otherwise known as the ego. And this dreaded self is perceived as failure to meet social expectations, and is commonly known as being self-centered and sometimes almost narcissistic. So now that we understand that the dreaded self is the part of the self within us that hasn't succeeded in the areas that we would like to succeed, you might just become a bit more gentle on the ego and beating up on your ego, because there is nothing to beat up on the ego when you are aware of the dreaded self and understand what the dreaded self represents. All right? So going further, what we want to do with the self, we want to unite. We want to unite the self, the I self, with a me self as the material self. I'm manipulating here two laptops. The me self made of material self, social self, spiritual self, and your evaluation of the me self, which is real self, ideal self, and dreaded self. So now that we know that, what are we going to do with all this information? We're going to work on uniting all these parts of the me self. And you might be familiar with something called parts therapy, or persona, or shadow work, or individuation. All of them, and all types of psychotherapy and spiritual therapy, or personal growth and development, and personal and professional growth and development. They all seek to become a little more gentle on the dreaded self, to work on becoming more successful on the parts of yourself that you haven't been as successful just yet, and also to unite all these parts of the self. Because when you understand the structure of the self, and also when you understand that the self develops in stages, by uniting all of these identities, and that living up to social expectations over the factual world problems becomes much more complex, while these developmental stages bring complex personal, moral, and cultural demands. So here is a picture which is worth 1,000 words. Like they say that the picture is worth 1,000 words, of the I self. So everything except the title in this image represents the I self. So you have the conscious thoughts at the bottom, and then you have the unconscious thoughts at the top, right? So the I self with all of the me self levels. But as a conscious experiences, and as conscious, within the unconscious thought, we have the meta delusions, and also we have the delusions of lack of recognition of conscious thoughts. So it can get very complex, but we're going to keep it a little simpler over here, and we're going to enlarge here over the conscious thoughts. So over the conscious thoughts, at this level, we are at the me self, both as a subjective phenomenology at a higher level, and me self as an objective phenomenology at a lower level. So if we are to look over here, and we're going to expand on this in more detail in a different class, but for right now, if you look within the gray area right here, you will see these circles. You have these circles in a gray area, and then you have the circles in a white area. So the me self on a subjective higher phenomenology level is in a gray area, and the me self objective lower level phenomenology is in a white area, right? Because let's look over here at the visual sense. At a visual level, within the subjective self, right here in the gray area, you have I see a hand, right? When you go a bit more detail within, more precise into the phenomenology higher level of the self, your experience will be, I see your hand. It becomes a bit more precise. But then when you go into the phenomenology of the lower level of the objective self, you begin to see, I see my hand. So this is a very quick and simple explanation of the consciousness of how the me self experiences itself. And we can go into much more complex information at a later time. But for right now, for all the good purposes, we're going to have Randy talk to us about different types of therapists and their initials and what that means, because each of these therapies, they target a specific area of the I self or the me self. Randy?
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Good. This is a high-level theory and high-level discussion. When somebody goes to see a therapist, often or a hypnotherapist, or somebody who's both, their main focus is not so much about what kind of school of therapy you believe in, even though that's essential. It's a very critical. What Carmen's talking about is the person needs to have a theory on what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing. The person, the client who's coming to a therapist is usually not so concerned about it. A lot of times people are more educated clients. They want to know a therapist that's a specialist in dialectical behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy and all this stuff, which is really interesting. But for somebody who is going to see a therapist, there are kinds of letters after their names. And except for MD and RN, I guess they're all get very confusing. They do. And total complete truth here, many times when I see therapists listed, I don't know what the letters mean. I have to look them up. So there are just tons of these qualifications and licensings and certifications. If I put if I put initials for every certification that I had, I probably have, more letters than that are in my name, So one of the things that, but we can look at what are the most popular ones, and that's what I think Carmen had asked me to kind of look at, which is what are the ones that most people will find when they go see a therapist. First thing to be aware of is therapy. The word therapist, if you're going to see a therapist, the therapy world is licensed state by state by state. There's no federal big agency that licenses counselors and therapists. Each state does their own licensing, and each state's different. And one of the things that is the most crucial is that anybody, in most states, anybody can say that they're doing therapy or counseling. They don't have to be licensed. In my opinion, it's very important that the person is licensed. Why? Because that means that there's some board somewhere with the state that's monitoring their activity. And if something goes wrong, which it does frequently, it does more frequently than I wish, when things go wrong, a client has a place to file a complaint or make a complaint. So the most popular therapists are the most, and the second division is between psychotherapists and doctors and psychiatrists. I think most people know this, but maybe not. Psychiatrists, by and large, 99% of them, maybe 98, do not do therapy. People are sometimes surprised at that when I'm talking to them, because they'll go to a doctor for psychiatry and they'll be surprised, well, he didn't talk a lot about my problems. Psychiatrists just don't do, they stopped doing that 30, 40, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. How old am I? Yeah, at least 60. So a psychiatrist is going to prescribe medicine, period. Some do therapy. Some are interested in therapy and talk therapy, and they combine it. But that's pretty rare. So if you go to an MD, a psychiatrist, who has an MD behind their name, then the expectation needs to be that they're going to ask you a lot of questions about the symptoms you're having: sleeping, eating, fidgeting, talking too much, talking too little, sitting around the house too, all kinds of symptoms they may ask for. But they're probably are not going to get into issues of the self, like Carmen's talking about. If you go to a psychotherapist, that's going to be more likely. There are several types of psychotherapists. The most popular ones are PhDs. Those are therapists, typically psychologists, even though there are others. There's PhD in education for some people, I believe. Actually, there's a PhD for a type of education degree. Most educational people, I think they're doctorates, ED. But anyway, a PhD is going to typically be a psychologist. What does that mean? That means that they've gone to school a few more years longer than other professionals. Psychologists typically will do some talk therapy. They are very heavy into psychological testing, and that's what their specialty is. Even though many of them do do therapy. No other licensed professional. LCSW is the next, and there's different kinds of LCSWs. Each state has a different designation, but the important thing to know, one, is in my opinion, is that there are licensed clinical social worker of some type, not a licensed master's social worker who is not fully licensed. Because that means that they have not completed, they have not reached the top of their license. They still have some other requirements that they need to meet to be fully licensed. In my state, which is Louisiana, an LCSW is the highest license I can reach as a social worker. I can't get any higher. There's LMSWs, which is licensed master's in social worker. I'm an LCSW, licensed clinical social worker, licensed master social worker. They can do therapy, but they can't do it on their own. They're not trained enough and supervised enough to do psychotherapy on their own. That's not a bad thing, but I need just a little more cautious me going to LMSW. I want to know who their supervisor is, how often they see their supervisor, are they going to discuss my case. I'd ask questions like that so I know that they will qualify. Then there's LPCs, which are very popular. LPCs, licensed professional counselors. They also do talk therapy. They are real popular in private practice. I find therapists for people for a living. That's what I do, my day job. And when I go looking for a therapist for somebody, I'd say 75% of them are LPCs. They are trained a lot like social workers, but not in some ways. The LPC designation originated way back in the day. They were the licensed people for counselors, for school counselors. They came from the school counseling world. Therefore, their theoretical basis is from an educational standpoint. So if somebody has an FPC, they're probably going to be more educationally in tune. They'll be more educationally bent. They'll do more psychoeducation than some others. Is that a bad thing? Of course not. But it's just a different field. And there's a couple more that I'll be through. There's LMFTs. That's a new designation. I was an LMFT for about 5 years until I dropped it because no insurance company would pay for my services. And it was wasn't very useful to me. So LMFT is a licensed marriage and family therapist. A lot of insurance companies do not pay for that therapy, so if people see them, they typically are paying out of pocket. That's going to change. Medicare changes rules in the next two years. Then they'll start recognizing LMFTs, and then for everybody. So that's going to change. They are also licensed. They're licensed by usually the same board as an LPC. There is kind of obvious. Their theoretical orientation is towards marriage and family themes. So they're going to their view is going to be attuned to how a person is in their family and how a person is with their significant other. So having said all that, and that's not even all. There are other kinds of licenses. There's licensed addictions counselors. mention is for just the general public. Instead of trying to figure this out, you can always Google it, but there's Google information on that, or ask the AI these days. But my suggestion is, if the person has private insurance, just get a list of names from them, ask if there's a case manager that can help. That's a good way. Get a list of providers that will be sent to you. Using EAP services, Employee Assistance Programs, that's another good way to access those lists. And call somebody, see if your primary care doctor knows somebody on there, see if your psychiatrist knows, see if a friend is familiar with them. I really avoid suggesting going to the internet and looking at Yelp reviews and all that, because the internet tends to draw lots of negative comments, and it is not by far, it's not a scientific or fair way to judge somebody. So I would not do that. I would look at, you can go to their website, go to Google their name, see if they have a website, see what their insurance company says about them. And then the bottom line, and I'll be quiet, I've talked for such years, is that the bottom line for it is the connection between you and this person. Ultimately, it does not matter if they have 6 degrees, they have a PhD, LCSW, LPC, LAC, LMFT. It doesn't matter ultimately. It doesn't matter if they've got about 10 of these on the wall. I only have one. Lots of people have a lot more. Doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Doesn't even matter if I have one. I have to put one up because I have to show that I'm certified. But ultimately, what matters is what? It matters the connection you have with this person. And a good therapist, no matter what their qualifications are, and no matter if and I forgot to mention hypnotherapist. No, I forget that. Somebody could be a hypnotherapist, but they're not licensed. It's a little different work.
It's board certified. For the hypnotherapists, yeah, we want them to be board certified because the industry doesn't require, the hypnotherapy industry doesn't require a license like medical and clinical license, but they ought to be board certified, and we have plenty, well not plenty, we have quite a few reputable hypnotherapy boards that are certifying us. Go on, Randy.
Yeah, Carmen's a certified hypnotherapist, I'm a certified hypnotherapist. If I do hypnotherapy with somebody and I do malpractice or I do something that's inappropriate or unethical, a person can call this group, which is on my website, and file a complaint. They can't do anything legally, but they can kick me out of the organization, and that would be a big red flag. If somebody's going to a hypnotherapist and they say, well, who are you certified by? Oh, I don't have a certification, I don't believe in that stuff. Anybody can be certified. That's just paperwork. When you go to that person, I'd avoid them.
Yeah.
And it should be certified by a reputable organization. There's tons of them around. Some are not that reputable, they're just tiny little groups put together by people selling their services. This one, and one Carmen's member of, they're national, they're well known, they're well Googled, you can see that they're very reputable. And you can also ask for training they had. Carmen's had multiple trainings with the American Institute, which is highly reputable, et cetera, et cetera. Just do research. But the main thing is, what is the connection that you have with this therapist? And I tell my clients, I'm having to find a therapist, call them, ask them to talk to them for 5 to 10 minutes on the phone, to tell them what your problem is, and see if they can help you. If they refuse to do that, I wouldn't see them. I'd call somebody else. Now, that may run into some problems because in some areas of the world, this country, there's not enough therapists to go around. So the therapists they do whatever they want to. They're running the show in a lot of parts of the country. But by and large, in my opinion, a therapist who's well-trained, skilled, and is somebody you can trust will be somebody that will say, okay, well, tell me what your problem is in a couple of sentences, and then I'll let you know if I can help, and we can schedule an appointment. So that's the Reader's Digest, which is an old term. A lot of people don't even know what that means. I'll just change that. But that's a very small, kind of a shrinked down version of the world of licensed mental health professionals. And I hope I've made it a little more clear, not dirty the water too much.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. We can always speak up and expand on on a long list of initials after their name. One important question that I would ask a therapist when approaching a therapist, you could simply ask them, are they going to address your material self, your social self, or your spiritual self? And if someone doesn't know the difference between these parts of the self, I would ponder and reconsider. And you also you can continue to ask them if they work on the I self or the me self, or if they're going to help you with your real self, ideal self, or dreaded self. Because there's all kinds of therapeutic approaches that are going to help you with these different parts of the self. And what me and Rennie would like to touch up right now further is hypnosis and their myths and benefits. Why? Because hypnosis is getting such a bad rap lately, and it's so beneficial, and I strongly believe that people need to learn more about it. So what me and Rennie are doing here tonight is educating people on the benefits of these different approaches that are available. So everybody should do their own homework and see what feels right for them. In the process of, how do I want to say this? In my professional career, I came across a significant number of psychotherapists that are beating down on hypnosis and stating that there's not enough science regarding to what hypnosis achieves. But to cover that in just a few sentences, we can just go over the American Psychological Association, which is one of the most reputable psychological organization in the United States. And depending on how much time you have to go over that website, you can go straight into this book that they are releasing soon called The Evidence-Based Practice in Clinical Hypnosis, that details the scientific evidence for and the clinical practice of hypnosis to treat a range of problems and symptoms, including but not limited to anxiety, depression, acute pain, chronic pain, and other behavioral problems habits, and so on. And these books will provide to you empirical evidence from a lot of research on the effectiveness of hypnosis for you to take into consideration. Now, what is hypnosis, might you ask? Is hypnosis for everyone? No, hypnosis it's not for everyone. And if you're not comfortable having hypnosis, then by all means, do not do it. A guided meditation could mimic a hypnosis session, but it is not. It could be similar to it, and you can try a guided meditation to see how you feel about that if you're very scared about attending a hypnosis session. And nowadays on YouTube, you can find so many different kinds of guided meditation. You can give that a try and see how that feels for you. What hypnosis is not sleep. Hypnosis is a state of awareness characterized by focused attention. Focused attention. We take out all of the distracting input stimuli, and it's a heightened responsiveness to proper suggestions given by a trained hypnotherapist, right? And hypnosis is very, very old. Hypnosis has been around since the beginning of time. And a trained and certified hypnotist and a hypnotherapist, and as we mentioned earlier, you want to look for a board certified hypnotherapist. A trained certified hypnotherapist will guide you into a deep state of focus and relaxation with specific language to have you relax and direct your attention into a more narrow type of attention, as opposed to having all of your input stimuli coming at you and distracting you. Because when you narrow your attention, you can focus on what you wish to resolve. Now, how does hypnosis work? The process is not completely understood by science, but is completely understood by those who've experienced it and have gotten a great amount of resolve. Now, in the deep state of hypnosis, your conscious mind is quieted. Conscious mind, otherwise known as the critical mind barrier, we are quieting your critical mind barrier, so you can tap into your subconscious, where you have your beliefs, your values, your perception, sensation, emotions, and a bunch of storage mechanism that has stored all of everything that has bothered and hurt you over your lifetime. It is stored in your subconscious. And when we get you into a very relaxed state, we begin to slowly and gently access that part of you which your subconscious is ready to access to find a resolve to some degree. Now, what are the myths about hypnosis? Well, myth number one is that hypnosis is entertainment. Well, there is such thing as stage hypnosis, things that you see in the movies, and movies are for entertainment, aren't they? Movies are not meant to provide you a resolve or therapy. And stage hypnosis is for entertainment. It's not for solving you issues. So if you want to experience hypnosis to resolve a particular problem, to find a solution to your problem, you would not go to a stage hypnotist. Myth number two, that you lose consciousness or have amnesia when you're hypnotized. That is so not true. And there's plenty of feedback on that. And documentation that people come out of hypnosis and remember everything that has happened. Now, is it true that some people fall asleep during the hypnosis session? Yes, sometimes they do at the beginning. Why? Well, because they're tired. but most people remember everything that has happened during hypnosis. And you remain aware of who you are, where you are, what's happening during the hypnosis, and if in a case of an emergency, big noise happens and you need to jump out of the chair and save your life, you will. You absolutely will. You will snap out of it very quickly. Now, myth number 3 is that you might be under the control of your hypnotherapist when you're hypnotized. Well, no, you're not under anybody's control. If anybody controls you, it's marketing and people, toxic people, right? But your hypnotist or hypnotherapist will guide the hypnosis, but hypnosis is something you do yourself. All we do is guide you, and then you allow yourself to access certain parts that you are interested in finding a solution for resolve. You don't lose control over your behavior, and you only get relaxed, and apparently you are being hypnotized by somebody you trust, somebody that has a good amount of positive references and good amount of positive testimonials. So you feel more comfortable, right? Myth number 4, that hypnosis is nothing more than deep sleep. Well, no, it's not deep sleep, and you don't sleep. And if you sleep during the hypnosis, then that's not hypnosis, then that's sleep. So you will be awakened, at least in my session. If you fall asleep during a hypnosis session ends, right? Now, is hypnotherapy dangerous? Well, yes, it is, if it's done by somebody that is not properly trained or somebody that's very, very new at it. Could be dangerous. Hypnotherapy, it's not mind control and it's not brainwashing. Brainwashing and mind control do exist, but it's not hypnotherapy. And in order for someone to be brainwashed, it takes a lot of time. It can take years and years and years. You're not going to be brainwashed within a session or 2 of hypnotherapy. But if you're not comfortable with a hypnotherapist, then by all means, do not do it. You have to be comfortable with a hypnotherapist. And can your therapist make you do something embarrassing or something that you don't want to do? No, we will not. And if that happens, then you're definitely not going to go back. And I highly suggest that if you're not 100% comfortable, you go ahead and record the entire session yourself. Nowadays, with the availability of the smartphones, you can make videos, audio recording really quickly for that particular session. But of course, you do not have the permission to take that video and post it all over the social media, because you might end up in legal troubles if you do that, but you can record it for yourself for the purpose. What I do with my clients is I make a recording for an audio recording for them to access later for their own benefit. So what condition could hypnosis be helpful in treating? Well, it can be helpful in treating many different problems. And treatment is a term that we want to use loosely enough, because hypnosis is solution-oriented and is not pathology-oriented. Okay, I'm going to stop this sentence right here. So with hypnosis, we can look into habit problems like alcohol and overeating and stop smoking. We can look into improving performance, sport performance or stage performance. We can look into improving confidence, working with depression, working with phobias, panic attacks, stress, anxiety, self-esteem, motivation, and a lot of things like that. So very often when you go about working on confidence, motivation, and self-esteem with hypnotherapy, it takes just a few sessions for you to achieve that goal, as opposed to talk therapy. But hypnosis is not for everyone, and talk therapy is not for everyone. So whichever works for you, you will know what works for you. Now, common mental health uses for hypnotherapy includes stress and anxiety, anxiety before medical or dental procedure, panic attacks, post-traumatic stress syndrome, phobias, and behavior control issues like smoking, losing weight, and enuresis like bedwetting, for example. Common medical uses for hypnosis include insomnia, asthma, hot flashes during menopause, gastrointestinal disorders like reflux and IBS, a lot of spastic conditions, pain control after the surgery, childbirth, pain with cancer, cancer treatments, fibromyalgia, pain with burns, headaches, migraine and tension, and of course pain with inflammation. And also another medical use of hypnotherapy would be the side effects of cancer chemotherapy and radiation, which includes nausea and vomiting. Hypnotherapy can be very helpful with that. For everybody, we don't know. For a lot of people, yes. Now, common performance uses of hypnosis includes improved attention, focus and concentration, memory and observation, study and exams. Now, this is quite a big deal if you ask me. Also, when it comes to performance, hypnosis can help you reduce your stage fright and improve your public speaking. Sports performance, it helps with sports performance, and most athletes have used and are using hypnosis to improve their performance. Also, it's used with meditation and mindfulness. It helps you regulate your emotional reaction. So moving from a reacting state into a response state. It helps you with your self-esteem and confidence. Everybody wants to be more confident and have an increased sense of self, that's social self. We talked about earlier, and most definitely helps with personal and professional development. Now, a good amount of people have approached me for hypnosis for sleep problems. Now, hypnosis for sleep is a little bit different than the other type of hypnosis, because the goal of sleep hypnosis is not to make a person fall asleep during the hypnosis itself. Instead, it works to change negative thoughts or habits related to sleep or related to that ruminating mind when you're about to go to sleep and put your head on a pillow and fall to sleep, right? But also, we can make special recording that could help you fall asleep quicker. How does that hypnosis achieve all of the relaxed state of focused relaxation? That is achieved by brain waves. So when we are in beta brain waves right here, we are highly aware, and a specific layer of beta brain waves has to do with a lot of anxiety, with high anxiety. So in hypnosis, through the process of relaxation, your brain begins to generate alpha brain waves and sometimes theta brain waves over here. These waves are not in very good order right here. Gamma brain waves, it's a newer brainwave discovered lately, and this is the brainwaves of your heightened perception. So people that have done a lot of meditation, a lot of consciousness expansion are experiencing gamma brainwaves rather quickly if they want to. Now, how do people describe their hypnotic experiences? Pretty much, majority of people describe it as being zoned out, so focused that you are able to block out surrounding distractions. Yes, because when you block those extra input stimuli, you are able to allow your subconscious mind to provide you with a solution that works for you to arrive to a resolve. Now, does hypnotherapy work? Well, the scientific evidence supporting the benefits of hypnotherapy is growing tremendously, especially with the sophisticated imaging equipment. And a lot of studies show promising results that are helpful in the use of hypnotic treatments that comes from research that treats pain, irritable bowel syndrome, those spastic conditions, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And most medical association organizations state that more studies are needed to draw more conclusion scientifically, and scientifically means that it needs to be measured. But a person's well-being is not always measured by science, right? But we already know that it is plenty of scientific evidence supporting the benefits of the hypnosis. Now, can anyone be hypnotized? No, not everybody can be hypnotized. Is hypnosis good for everyone? No, hypnosis is not good for everyone. And if a person has fears or concern about the hypnosis, then the hypnosis, it will not work for them. That's why if someone is curious about the hypnosis, but it's very, very concerned about it, I would suggest trying a guided meditation so you learn how your body and your brain and your conscious awareness experiences a good state of relaxation. Because for most people, when they begin to be relaxed, they go straight to sleep. A lot of people do not know how to continue to be awake while in alpha brainwave, and most so in theta brainwaves. There's a large amount of people that fall right asleep when in theta brainwaves. And it's a very good habit to develop to maintain conscious awareness, well, not driving when in theta brainwaves, but maintain conscious awareness of your surrounding, your thoughts, emotions, and feelings, and so on. But for a person to benefit from hypnosis, they have to be highly motivated to overcome an issue. And when they are, they do. And sometimes some people are very curious, and then their curiosity gets resolved. But mind you that when we begin hypnosis with someone that has never done hypnosis, have never been hypnotized, then what we do, I usually go for a very deep progressive relaxation at the beginning. That's all we do for the very first few sessions up until the person is more comfortable. And we know when a person is comfortable to go a little deeper with their subconscious or not. Why? Because they simply say so. I don't want to go there. And that's that. We know not to go there. Or their breathing pattern changes, and then we, as properly trained hypnotist, hypnotherapist, we look for something called idiomotor responses. Is hypnotherapy inappropriate for some people in certain situations? Yes, it is. We don't want hypnotherapy. It's not appropriate for people with severe mental health issues, such as psychotic symptoms, people that have hallucination and delusions, and hypnosis is also not appropriate for people that use drugs or alcohol. It's not appropriate for that. And again, hypnosis is a state of awareness characterized by focused attention, a heightened responsiveness to suggestion, even by a trained hypnotherapist. And I think this should suffice for right now. What do you think, Randy? We can go deeper into Ericksonian hypnosis, but we can cover Ericksonian hypnosis at a different time. Right now, what I could add a sentence or two about Ericksonian hypnosis is that out of all the hypnosis styles and techniques, Ericksonian hypnosis is the most permissive one. That means that is the gentlest of all the hypnosis techniques out there. With Ericksonian hypnosis, we are trained to guide you into realization for you to discover inner resources that help you achieve adaptive states. This is what we all want in life, to achieve adaptive states, because when we achieve adaptive states, then life is not difficult and we begin to experience flow, otherwise known as happiness. All right? Let's see if we have any questions. Go ahead, Randy.
Jen, I would just add a couple of other things to what you're saying, kind of addendums to what you're saying, Carmen. The first is that hypnotherapy and psychotherapy are not one or the other. They often can work just like this, hand in hand, hands together. If somebody is sick, most therapists are not trained in hypnosis. Almost none are. I'm one of the few who is, but most are not. So they may try a little bit of hypnosis stuff, something that Carmen was referencing, like guided meditation or guided imagery. If somebody's seeing a therapist and they want to feel more confident in talking to somebody, a therapist may help them on a guided imagery type thing, but that is not hypnosis. So if there is something blocking their treatment, if they're not getting better for some reason, and the therapist, they've looked at different options. One option is to go to a hypnotist for 2, 3, 4 sessions and see if there's a subconscious block. Go to somebody who's a certified hypnotherapist. And so they're not mutually exclusive. And then the block can be resolved pretty quickly, or at least it can be opened up, the door can be opened, and the person can go back to therapy. So they're very much, they very much can work together. And then the only other thing I would add is that in terms of Ericksonian hypnosis being gentler, I believe how I would describe it, gentler means to me, for at least my understanding, my experience with Ericksonian hypnosis is gentler is not directive. That's great for some people. In other words, when I was being trained with Ericksonian stuff that Carmen was trained with, when I was in my practice groups, if I said something like, okay, make yourself comfortable, sit back and relax. Oh no, don't tell somebody, you don't tell anybody what to do, this is America. Don't tell anybody what to do ever. Well, that works in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, that's not the most effective approach. If somebody is coming to somebody and they say, it's coming to a hypnotherapist, and they've got a terrible habit, or they're struggling with an unconscious block, their therapy can get past, sometimes it can be gentle, but more directive. It can be, okay, relax, I'm going to give you some instructions, I'm going to give you some suggestions, I'm going to tell you what to do. What is Carmen's referencing, as I hear it, is that it's just less directive. oh, that's the best kind. That's the kind I love. Well, it may be, maybe it was different, it may be. But the good hypnotherapists like Carmen and others, they can adapt the style of treatment to what the client,
Yes.
she is expert in determining what a client needs. Do they need that indirect approach? Will they flare up if Carmen says, okay, now just take a deep breath, start closing your eyes, don't tell me what to do. I can't do that, I can't close my eyes. Carmen's going to be able to adjust her style. And any hypnotherapist will be able to do this, but Carmen will be able to adjust her style and go to a different type. And she may see any hypnotherapist may see some come in and they may say, okay, sit in that chair. I give you one example. I had a client one time who came in and said to me, okay, I'm ready. Go ahead. And I got some supervision on that case because I wasn't really comfortable with that. And my supervisor, who trains me in therapy, said, well, Randy, the first thing you need to do is tell them to cross their arms and relax. Some therapists will never say that. They might say, okay, sit there, keep those arms crossed as tight as you can. That's right, tight. They're going to avoid it. So it's a different style.
Yeah.
And gentle isn't always the best. They may feel like that sometimes other styles work, and a therapist like Carmen is going to know what style works, so she'll be able to tell. Okay,
That's a good point. That's a good point. But the reason I say gentle for those people that are curious but a bit apprehensive and a bit scared about giving it a try, that is something that can go very gentle. And what's good to mention is that we get hypnotized by reading a poem. We get hypnotized by watching a movie. All of the commercials are hypnotic. Or when somebody insults you and you're around a lot of toxic people, they say something that doesn't sit right with you, you have been hypnotized, right? So what we do in hypnosis and hypnotherapy, we try to unhypnotize all of the heavy that's sitting in you. And that
Can I just make one quick other comment, because you're right on that, is that there's a new book out. You start off the myth of hypnosis. There's a new book out that gives the idea, the theory that the person who shot Martin Luther King Jr. Was part of a vast conspiracy. And the book itself says, I'm going to excerpts after the book, is that James Earl Ray, who was the man who shot him, was hypnotized as part of a conspiracy to shoot Martin Luther King. That is total BS. Just like Carmen was saying. So you hear something like that about somebody out there. Well, here's the thing. Somebody can be hypnotized to shoot somebody, or they can be hypnotized to make them go and rob a bank. Well, that's just total craziness. Because, I mean, if that were true, Carmen would be the richest person. She'd be richer than, she'd be hypnotizing Elon Musk to get all his money. So, it's very, those methods of hypnosis are still so pervasive, and it is totally impossible to do that. Otherwise, we'd all be rich.
Yes and no. We are not rich. Our hypnotherapists, no, we're not rich. All of my hypnotherapist colleagues that I encounter, they're highly passionate about helping people overcome their issues. We all have some sort of issues. We all have been hurt. We all have something sitting something heavy on our hearts, and hypnosis can help you, definitely help you resolve that to some effect. And lately what I've noticed that because there is a difference between emotions and feelings, people can even don't know how to differentiate between emotions and feelings. And then you go to talk therapy and they ask you how you feel, what happened, how do you feel about it? What happened, how do you feel about it? Well, I felt bad, I feel awful. People don't have the words to describe it, and oftentimes their subconscious is preventing them from describing the negative emotion because they're trying to stay away. The subconscious is helping you keep safe and stay away from hurt. Therefore, you don't want to talk about that particular event in constantly talking and talking and talking. And I know a good number of people that have been re-traumatized by talk therapy. For some people it works, and for some people it doesn't work. It's just as it is with all therapy. How many types of therapy did you say there are? At least 320 last you counted, right? And you've been in a business.
I looked it up today. There are approximately 250 schools of therapy. I just looked that up.
Wow. 250 schools of therapy. And within those schools, they have different techniques underneath. Anyway, so what happens in hypnosis, and something specific that I do with helping people resolve some of their emotional trauma, is we don't need to put a label on that which when happened, because the subconscious doesn't talk in words and numbers. Subconscious talks in images, and it's abstract, and things that don't make sense to you, and things which I and Randy are trained to identify and know what to do with it. And working through images in your subconscious, things get resolved without you having to access a painful memory. It is, science cannot make this linear. It does exist. This is alchemical hypnosis. Also might be known under the past life regression or regression hypnosis, but not all. Mostly alchemical hypnosis will help you work with those images in a way in which those emotions buried will resolve themselves. It's fascinating how that works. It's simply fascinating, and it works. So as Randy said earlier, whether it's talk therapy or hypnotherapy, it's not one or the other. It's definitely both. Give it a try and see what works for you. And if you see a therapist a few times and in within 4 or 5 or 6 sessions, you're not getting anywhere, you don't feel like you've gotten anything, then it's time to move on. If you see me 4 or 5 or 6 times and you haven't gotten anywhere, then it's time for you to find somebody else. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, you should be able to at least talk to your therapist if it's after 3 or 4 sessions and things aren't improving. Talk to a therapist to find out what's happening, and if a therapist is going to listen to you, figure out what's going on. Maybe we need to change, shift this direction. If they get defensive and don't want to talk about it and say, well, you're not doing your work, I'm doing my part, you're not doing yours, that kind of thing. Yes, move on.
There you go. That's a very good point. And another point I want to make is the word fiduciary. Fiduciary means acting in the best interest of the client. Now, fiduciary is highly used when it comes to in the business world when when money is involved. But a fiduciary, it's very much the responsibility as therapist, any kind of therapist, has a fiduciary duty to their client to act, provide their services in the best interest of the client, not in a way to keep the client coming back to make more business. No, the business of therapy is not a business per se. It's not profit before well-being. At least that's how I see it. All right. So that should be it for tonight, and we will come back with more on the self, and we will take your questions and answer your questions about those initials and all of those kinds of different initials on the therapist, and try to give you the best answer